I've never related with those realities because they were not mine until I started to broaden my horizon.
Are there any unique aspects to grieving process when it comes to loss of physical health or ability compared to other types of loss?
Um, I think that when it comes to like processing grief, there's always the template of like dabda, but how it shows up with processing illness or loss of limb is unique. For one, when you are in denial, it will show up as like rejecting pain, rejecting the symptoms, rejecting the diagnosis, staying away from your loved ones, not disclosing. And sometimes with faith based people, they may use their faith or religion to kind of mask their true emotions or feelings or even like acceptance of the diagnosis. Right. So it would definitely like it to be specific to like the loss of chronic or the illness. With anger, it's like, why didn't I learn about this sooner? This doctor is lying. He wants to take advantage of me. Why? Or they can turn it inwards. Like, why didn't I take better care of myself? I was told not to do this. If I had, stuff like that. And then when you now get to like bargaining, it's like, what if you start bargaining with yourself? It's like, what if we do medication instead of doing this? What if we sleep? What if I start exercising now, or I change my diet now, or stuff like that, right? And then, as of course, depression was set in, the way we kind of can't separate grief from depression. Depression was set in, and you start like processing like the new reality of yourself, and it gets more complicated if you've experienced other type of losses that is sort of like is stacked on it before you now get to the point of acceptance. And sometimes acceptance doesn't come by itself. You kind of need to have a support system or a professional to help you come to terms with what you're feeling, where you're just like, okay, I'm a person living with this chronic illness, I'm a person living with this disease or this disorder. And these are the next step. This is the first step that I have to take from it, even if you don't like it. So it's similar in the sense that like you might go through the ringer the same way other people will go through it, but how it shows up will be unique to that symptom, to that illness, living with a disability or living with an illness and so on. Yeah.
And as a clinical psychologist, what coping strategies do you recommend for someone who's grieving the loss of physical health or ability? Are there any particular therapeutic approaches or support system that has proven to be effective for individuals who are navigating this type of grief?
It depends on the type of grief that you're experiencing. If it's grief is one normal, it's grief is a normal reaction to the loss of anything. So in a normal situation, it's expected that you feel your feelings, that you move through it, that you get angry, that you take your time and you process it, and so on. But where it gets wild is when it now starts getting complicated in the sense that rather than you moving through it and making sense of it, you start it. I listened to a YouTube episode this morning where the person compared grief to like a wound, where in processing grief, normally you just sort of like salve it, you clean it up. It's painful, but you're just like taking care of it. And it's just like, oh, this is annoying. This is painful, but this is what I have to do today. But when it gets complicated, it's like rather than you taking care of it, you're like punching it or ignoring it and it gets infected. So in a situation like that, I would say like grief is a normal reaction to things, and you don't really fix grief. You just like move forward with grief. But when it gets complicated is when you're like invalidating your feelings. It's like, what does it mean that this loss of limb, that I'm disaffected by losing my limb, I'm a strong person, or it is my fault that I experienced this. If I didn't go out that day, if I didn't get into that accident, if I didn't do this, if I didn't do that, and you start turning against yourself, and you're not on your side while moving through this very difficult, challenging situation. So in that moment, I would say one gets professional support. And professional supports can look like group therapy. It can look like finding people that are experiencing the same thing that you're experiencing. Because sometimes when you're experiencing this sort of complicated grief, you expect your family to know what you're feeling, to know what to do because they are the ones that know you. But the fact that they know you, it doesn't mean that they know the unique realities of what you are living with. And sometimes that may mean that they are not as equipped to help you. It might mean that they want to stay away because they feel like you need space. Meanwhile, that will make you feel disconnected or lonely. Meanwhile, you need connection. And sometimes it may mean that they are smothering you to actually process what you're feeling and actually hear your voice, right? So it's very unique. So sometimes finding a group that would help you, that would one validate your feelings, that would help you say like, this is annoying, this is complicated, this is, and just feel your feelings without bypassing it is a good start. And then two, it helps to like reframe your experience, and reframing the experience means that when you're downplaying the day-to-day aspects, when you're zooming in, you're downplaying the positives, when you're catastrophizing, when you're doing all of that, when you're looking at like the either or, I'm either someone with like a complete sense of abilities with nothing wrong with me, or I am damaged. That is a very polarized way of thinking. Sometimes it helps to restructure what restructure your thought process, and that's where like cognitive may come in and so on. And generally, finding support means like building your resilience to the day to day things. Adenike talked about how when she meets a child, it is a unique experience to that child altogether. And I feel like in a situation like that, you are re experiencing how different you are. And it may not be as wild as it was like 17 years ago or 10 years ago, but it's still showing that there's a gap between an imagined ideal self and the real self that you are feeling. And sometimes it takes a bit of resilience to accept that real self again and say, like, yes, today my real self looks this way, but my real self is also helping me swim, and I can drive, and I can walk, and I can read a book, and I can do all of these marvelous functional things. And I thank my body for the capacity to do all of these things. And sometimes the real self might just be like, yeah, it sucks that I am living with this reality, and that is okay. But you're not harming yourself and you're not dysfunctional. Both sides of the equation, they are both healthy because you don't have to be positive every day, but you also don't have to turn against yourself every day. So, like, those are the things that I would validate your experience, find community, actually communicate to your family and your friends what you need. You might need space, but it doesn't mean space doesn't have to mean disconnection or isolation. You might need community, but community doesn't have to be like you smoothing yourself and so on. So yeah, that's kind of where I'll pause.
Thank you very much. That was very, very insightful. And the question I have for you, just as to hear from your own perspective, is as you ventured through your healing process, did you discover any unconventional coping strategies, right? That is not by the book, quote unquote. As a person living with this type of personal experience, sometimes we find this unconventional way of coping. So, were there any unconventional coping strategies that you were even surprised at its effectiveness that you can walk us through and tell us about?
I think that whilst I was in the hospital, I did keep a journal, and I think that helped me, especially in circumspect of releasing my first book about that whole journey. I didn't engage in any vices. I Yeah, I took God seriously. I had this neighbor who would always visit in the morning and evenings until I went to the hospital. We would read the Psalms together. She would share me Bible verses. Um, no one talked about therapy. No one talked about speaking to a therapist. I didn't even know that existed as an option. I didn't know that was an option, speaking to a therapist. No one did any of that. So I really cannot place my fingers on how I coped outside of knowing specifically that one of the things that was very loud for me that resonated was I'm an only child. I needed to be strong. So I told myself I needed to be strong for my parents. That was what I told myself. But growing older now, I realized that they were even the ones that were stronger. My parents were way stronger than I was, and I saw how well they took it, handled it. Yeah, we had a few issues here and there, to be honest with you, but overall, they were stronger. So there was no, I think that also, okay, one thing that comes to mind now is by nature, helping people comes very easily to me. So one way I believe very strongly that I was able to navigate this reality was speaking to people casually. Oh, I know this person. Okay, do you can you speak to this person? Ah, okay, no problem. Oh, there's someone here. Can we go and visit them? Are you sure? So I believe that lending a helping hand, literally paying it forward, was really a tool and still is a tool that has helped me navigate this reality, because now I'm able to even assess different permutations through the different experiences of others. Never once did I know what it meant to be visually impaired or have low vision or have or be low, low hearing, or be be an albino or be a dwarf. I've never related with those realities because they were not mine until I started to broaden my horizon and then even work aggressively in this inclusion and disability space. And I think very strongly that that's what has been able to help me navigate this reality. Does it get to me often? And maybe not as often as it used to, because there's something called phantom pains where your brain tells your body that, oops, that the leg is still there, the leg is still there, so I want to scratch, I want to itch, I want to in those moments I'm like, kai, if I had my two legs now, I won't be dealing with this reality. But outside of that, nothing, nothing. I took God seriously. I dedicated my time and resources into God, God, God. I was in all the Bible classes. I was active in church. So yeah, I think that, yeah, those are the things that helped me.
Yeah, awesome.